I mean, my memory of this as a minister is quite old now because, as I said, I'm a Labour MP. But I do remember some of these judgments being quite important. For example, the ECJ, if memory serves me right, ruled on rolling up holiday pay while on maternity leave, which became quite important. That was an area of dispute, the extent to which women on maternity leave were entitled to holiday pay as part of their... It was quite an important judgment on that. Going back to some of the earlier questioning about the various models of international agreements that have been mooted in terms of the future UK-EU relationship. Now, in this committee, we've been all around the world on this. I don't mean physically, but I mean in terms of the evidence we've taken. We've talked about association agreements, such as exist between the EU and Ukraine, customs union agreements, like with Turkey, free trade agreements, these best-in-class free trade agreements with Canada, Japan, South Korea. On the matter of labour law, do any of those models that currently exist come anywhere near the access to enforcement for workers' rights that exist at the moment? I'll start with you, Sara.
The long answer is that there are other international labour standards. The International Labour Organization has a series of conventions that countries across the world are signed up to. And I wouldn't denigrate that system at all. It's incredibly important. It sets really important standards. And I think we're all really pleased to sit in this room knowing that the clothes that we're wearing or the foods that we eat have been produced by workers who are protected by those standards. And International Labour Organization standards often feature in some of these other agreements that you've outlined. So it's in the Canada deal, for example, it says that the parties of that agreement agree to stick to International Labour Organization standards. The problem is that they are not as well advanced and developed as the standards we have in the EU. CETA says it will respect International Labour Organization standards, but it doesn't come with any enforcement mechanism, and it doesn't come with any sanctions. So the short answer is no. Membership of the single market is a really, really unique beast, and it's one that workers here in the UK and across Europe are really pretty grateful for.
Thank you. Would anybody like to add it? That's my last question. So this is your...
Maybe just a small point that the current arrangements in the backstop, if the backstop ever enters into force, are not likely to be the only requirements in place, because these are only requirements in return for tariff-free access. It's very likely that if the backstop enters into force, that also market access will have been negotiated, at least to a certain degree, and it's very likely that the EU then will have requested more conditions in return for that market access. And then, of course, the question is to what extent can the UK negotiate the freedom to set its own labour standards or not. That's then, of course, another question. But I do think it's quite likely that on top of the requirements as part of tariff-free access, you will see other requirements as part of market access. Because if that market access will not have been negotiated, you will have a lot of disruption, of course.
Okay, I'll leave it there.